This year for spring break, we headed to Africa. After a few days up north in Laikipia Wilderness Camp and Old Pacheta, we've flown down to the Maasai Mara. On Saturday morning, we woke up in Nairobi, took a taxi over to the Wilson Airport, and hopped on a propeller plane out to the Maasai Mara. The flight was wonderfully scenic, with a great view of Nairobi and then the savannah below us. We were picked up at the airport by our wonderful guide, Bessie. We stopped to gawk at a few animals en route to the Maasai River Camp. The Maasai River Camp is located right beside the Mara River and close to the Musiara Gate, the Maasai Mara National Park, the northern gate of the park. Quick video tour of our tent here at the Mara River Camp. And have a nice bed. It is canvas all around. Overhead lights and zip up windows. Plenty of space here. Luggage racks. Tiny little closet, and then in here we have a shower and sink and toilet. We checked in, explored our rooms and the grounds, watched the hippos in the river, and had some lunch before our afternoon safari. After we ate, we hopped back in the safari van with Bessie for an afternoon safari. The lodge had picked us up in a brand new pop-top vehicle, but they obliged us when we requested a much older, open-sided truck. Better for viewing the animals right up close. Heading into the Mara, we saw lots of zebras and immediately encountered a massive herd of Cape buffalo upon entering the park. We'd already seen the big five up north, but that's 1 for 5 in the west. From the buffalo, we headed over to watch some elephants, 2 for 5 in the Mara, and then tracked a few giraffes over to a hippo-filled pool. We enjoyed watching the hippos roll around on each other while the giraffes looked on. From the giraffes, we headed back towards the gate and encountered a group of 3 male lions getting ready to hunt. That's 3 out of 5 in the Mara. Unfortunately, they yawned a lot, moved around some, and never made a hunt. We headed back towards the gate, spotted a sea eagle and some other animals on our way back to camp for dinner and bed. On Sunday morning, we had our earliest morning of the trip. We woke up at 5:30 to get some coffee and then hop back in the safari vehicle. And I'm glad we did. The sunrise over the Maasai Mara was absolutely stunning. Immediately upon entering the park, we tracked some lionesses who were on the prowl. Unfortunately, their prowl didn't last long and they laid down, so we headed over to the other side of the park. There were several male lions getting ready to hunt, or so it looked. One was growling loudly for his brothers. On the other side of the hill was a big, old lion, so we moved over to him. And it turns out he was one of the legends of Maasai Mara, one of the biggest and oldest lions in the park, the last of the old Black Rock lion pride. From there, we turned a corner and our lodge had set up a wonderful bush breakfast, complete with a buffet breakfast and an omelet bar. It was absolutely incredible and unexpected. After eating our full, we moved deeper into the park in search of a cheetah. And fortunately, we got lucky. As we came over one of the hills, we saw a bunch of vehicles looking on, and there in the middle was a cheetah. We watched him for a bit, climbing over some logs and walking around the savanna towards some antelopes. But in the end, there were just too many vehicles, and we decided to move on. Nearby, we spotted some ostriches and wanted to go for some pictures and see them. Then we decided to go to where the leopard often hunts. On our way over, on one of the hills was a group of hyenas taking down a topi, so we stopped to watch that for a bit, but it looked like it was going to be a long hunt. It did look like the topi got away as we were leaving, but probably only a temporary respite. When we got to the area where the leopard was, it was fully overgrown and pretty marshy, but Pessie was a phenomenal driver, flipped it into four-wheel drive, and we made it deep into the leopard's territory, and there he was, sitting on a mound. We got about 2 minutes of a visit with the leopard, and then the leopard headed into the bush. By that point, it was late in the afternoon, and on our way back, we stopped to check in on the cheetah and the lion, and then saw some impalas fighting and doing other things, and eventually made it back to our lodge. What an incredible day of seeing wildlife.
One of my favorite touches here. The bed warmer. Warms up your bed so it's nice and toasty when you hop in.
Now that it's Monday morning, our plan is to grab some breakfast. And then hitch a ride with Pessie back to the airport for our flight back to Nairobi. What an incredible trip to the Maasai Mara it's been. It felt like we've seen so many animals, and we aren't ready to go back quite yet. This park is absolutely what we dreamed that Africa would look like. Deep in the savannah, with rolling grasslands as far as the eye can see. There are tons of animals, and it's just like being in a nature documentary. Simply incredible. What a visit. We did learn on this trip the difference between a national park and a conservancy. Up north, we'd stayed mostly in conservancies, where there are strict limits on the number of vehicles following animals, or the number of visitors in the park in general, and your entrance fees stay a little bit more local. Here in the Maasai Mara, it's expensive to get in, and the money goes to the National Park Service, where it's administered in different ways. There aren't really any limits on the number of vehicles, so sometimes there are a few too many vehicles following the animals, and it feels a little unsafe for everyone. But that said, the Maasai Mara is absolutely incredible, a national treasure here in Kenya, and one of the most amazing places we've ever been. What a couple days it's been. Now we're ready to catch our flight back to Nairobi for a trip to Amboseli, and then back for a weekend exploring Nairobi. But that's a story for our next video.